FlyingPress now allows you to enable Redis object caching in a few simple steps, greatly reducing the load on your server and optimizing database queries for improved performance. Redis is basically like a page cache, but it caches database query responses instead of just HTML and other static assets. For WordPress, which is a query-heavy platform, object caching like Redis can improve performance drastically. This comes into play heavily on pages like e-commerce account pages, cart pages, checkout pages, and anything that is dynamic and therefore can't be cached like a static page. I'm Elijah from FlyingPress, and in this video, I'm going to show you the easy way to enable Redis object caching and improve your site's performance. Redis is a caching layer that lives in memory rather than on your server's disk, which makes it much faster to read from. But instead of caching HTML, images, and other static assets, it stores the results of queries. Let's imagine a query for WooCommerce products, for example. The first time the products are queried, which happens when someone visits the shop page, the server receives the query, looks up the products, and serves the results directly from the database. With object caching, like Redis, enabled, the result of that query is then stored in the object cache in your server's memory. The next time that same query is performed, it will be delivered from the much faster object cache layer rather than being fetched directly from the database. With WordPress, most page loads perform some kind of database query. That means that object caching can have an outsized impact on site performance, especially on query-heavy sites like e-commerce stores. Next, let's take a look at how to enable Redis object caching in FlyingPress. Before enabling Redis in FlyingPress, make sure your hosting provider supports Redis and that any other object caching plugins are disabled. For this demo, we're using FlyingHost, which supports Redis and provides a dedicated Redis instance for every site, rather than sharing an instance between sites like most other hosts do. FlyingHost also automatically pre-configures your site for Redis, so you don't have to define any new constants in wp-config.php. FlyingPress will pull the pre-configured Redis credentials, so there are no additional setup steps required. If you're hosting somewhere else, you'll need to consult your hosting provider's documentation on setting up Redis on the hosting side. While FlyingPress will try to use the default Redis credentials if possible, your hosting provider may require some additional configuration. In the video description, I'll include a link to our documentation, which includes the required Redis credential constants in case you need to add them to your wp-config file manually. Now, I want to run a quick test using Query Monitor before I turn on Redis, so you can see the impact that object caching has. It's already super fast since FlyingHost runs on 5 GHz servers. This means that improvements are less pronounced than you'll see on typical servers. That being said, you can still see the response time and large number of queries here. This is happening every time someone visits the shop page. Now let's go enable Redis object caching in FlyingPress. In the WordPress admin panel, go to FlyingPress, then the Caching tab. Scroll down to the object caching option and turn it on. Now we can take a look in the FlyingPress dashboard to see the connection status, memory usage, and cache hit ratio. Let's visit a few pages to see how these statistics change with object caching in play. We'll navigate through a few product pages, then circle back to the shop page and check Query Monitor. On the first load, you might not see the changes. That's because Redis caches the query response when the page is loaded for the first time after enabling it. But if we reload the page, you can see that with object caching enabled, our database query time has dropped significantly, and the number of queries has gone from over 300 to just 35. As you can see, object caching is a fantastic tool for speeding up your WordPress sites. It'll even help on slower servers and cheaper hosting plans, as long as your host supports Redis. On already fast hosting like FlyingHost, the result is less dramatic, but Redis still reduces load on the server, query count, and query times significantly. I'm Elijah from FlyingPress, and if you want to speed up your site with Redis object caching, visit flyingpress.com to learn more. Thanks for watching.